TV.
Well, I can't believe it. Here we are with the last Learning Now television of 2023. It feels like 5 minutes ago we had to switch to Zoom because of the pandemic. And here we are almost 3 years later. I think this year's been absolutely fascinating on a number of levels. And we've got a great programme to wrap up the year for you. Nigel, who have we got on?
Kate, happy Christmas to you. It is our Christmas edition. And as you see, we've made a huge effort to dress up and look Christmassy, which I hope everyone appreciates. Unbelievable. We just, no stone is left unturned on Learning Now TV.
High budget production.
Well, it's a high budget production. We've got some great people. 3 key interviews this month. The first is Mark Ramos from Cornerstone. And Mark and I have a really interesting chat about trends in talent development. Mark is an expert and a really nice guy, and I had a really good time with Mark. Then it's an introductory interview, really, with Ben Campbell. He's the Chief Executive of the Australian Institute for Training and Development, the AITD, and it is his first interview with me, and he hasn't been long in post. So I've been giving him a little bit of advice about how to kick the organisation into shape, and he's doing a great job. So I'm really pleased that we've managed to get him on the show. And finally, Danny Seals. Danny's a good guy from way back, and he's written a book. He's doing all sorts of interesting things. I think he's moving to Dubai. Anyway, Kate talks to Danny, and you find some really interesting insights from Danny. Always, every time he's on the show, something new comes up. Good show ahead, Kate. A good show ahead.
Absolutely. Lots of experience, some good food for thought to take us into the new year. So enjoy the show.
It's a privilege and a pleasure to be able to talk to Mark Ramos today. Mark is the Chief Learning Officer at Cornerstone On Demand, but he's had an illustrious IT career working for Novartis previously, but also Microsoft and Accenture and Oracle, amongst others. So he knows his stuff about IT. And today, I'd like to talk to him about AI, and particularly AI and learning. So, Mark, first of all, welcome. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you today.
The pleasure is mine, Nigel. Great to be here.
Now, let's just clarify a few things for people. Everyone thinks AI, or some people think AI is one thing. It's not one thing. Just tell me what kind of AI you think will resonate amongst the learning community, and then we can deep dive into that area rather than talk generically about AI.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think there is not so much ambiguity or unknowns related to the distinction of AI and Gen AI and all the other fascinating things that are happening today. But the way I kind of consider it, Nigel, is at a high level, there is artificial intelligence as like the Uber umbrella, for lack of other words. And there's like these subsets. Machine learning has been a subset for decades. And most recently, particularly with OpenAI's release of ChatGPT 3.5, which happened November 31st of last year, so fairly recently, that's when generative AI or Gen AI really got a lot of appeal, got a lot of excitement, maybe got a little fright and anxiety for some folks. But Gen AI is really the predominant set of applications or technologies today. And if you look at another subset of AI, at least in terms of its tie or connections to generative AI tools and so forth, it's large language models, or LLMs. And think about LLMs as that absolute data foundation that a lot of folks can build their different applications on top of. I kind of think of sometimes a large learning model as kind of like the operating system for Gen AI tools. Is providing those unique foundational services, and then you can build whatever cool app on top of that, whether it's rapid content production or really building cool videos or doing translation services. So it's a really interesting family.
Yes. So let's talk about Cornerstone. Where do you see LLMs, Gen AI going in Cornerstone? If you take us from today, 5 years hence, is it going to be important for the company?
It's pivotal. And it's not so much, pivotal to the company, it's pivotal to our customers, whether you're an existing customer or a prospect. One really great thing that we need to take a lot of pride in, and something that I don't think we share enough about, is Cornerstone's been working with formidable AI and machine learning for 11 years now. And when you compare our history and our heritage, for lack of better words, and the capabilities and the expertise that we've been building ever since then, compared to where a lot of other folks are coming out with a lot of their newer products, we've got a long, rich history. And the way that we are utilizing that history and that expertise, Nigel, is we have our core LMS, as well as our core LXP, or Learning Experience Platform, and a variety of other technologies. And so our big focus right now is where can we best leverage AI, or maybe a subset, Gen AI, across our entire technology platform. So this way, whether you're thinking about a really, really awesome learning experience, or you're just thinking about the learning management side of things from an operational standpoint, or you're thinking about talent marketplaces and mobility, where can we thread that technology to make sure that we've got a holistic experience for our customers, prospects, and clearly for users and learners.
Yeah. So what would I notice? What would I notice that's different? How would it make my experience of Cornerstone On Demand better or slicker or whatever?
Yeah, the way I kind of think about that, I use the metaphor of like a restaurant. So in a restaurant, typically you go to the dining area, the front of the house, where you receive your menu. And this is the stuff that you experience with the menu or the recipes or the actual food item itself. But you know what? Also in the restaurant, there's this thing called the kitchen. There's the stuff that happens behind the scenes that isn't readily available to the diner or the user or the learner in this case. So when I think about those typical use cases, what's visible to the learner could be, that list of different skills that they are interested in growing. Or maybe there's the list of content that someone is really, really, excited to learn and participate in based on the type of content. So in the front of the house, using this metaphor, AI actually helps an individual understand their personal skill needs against that unique set of content. So by that, I mean, if I'm interested in machine learning and I know that my content choices on the menu is 10,000 classes, right? Well, wait a second. I'm a beginner. I just need to know the top 5. Or maybe I need to know a certain niche. What is machine learning for financial services? Or maybe I need to know a certain language, machine learning for financial services in Italian, or whatever it might be. So that way, AI actually identifies the right content, or guess what? The right expert that can fill that need if you don't want to take a class, but you just want to be mentored perhaps. So that's in the front of the house, the dining room. And in the kitchen, it's all about data, 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 data. So if we can capture the right type of data related to these experiences, the individual against content, the individual with a peer, the individual with an expert, and really build out that ontology or that behind the scenes inventory of the data, then guess what? That data can be used for other needs, for other use cases, for other platforms, whether it's the learning management system or the learning experience platform, whatever that might be. So the behind the scenes kitchen work related to that data flow is absolutely, absolutely critical.
That's really clear. Thank you for that. So if I can paraphrase and use your metaphor, it means that the dining experience will be slicker, more personalized, richer, even though there may be stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. I just know that the food that I'm getting is more appropriate for me, tastes better or whatever. And meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, churning around in the background that I don't really need to know about. I just need to consume or have a better experience. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think that's a great summary and example. One example that might be helpful for the audience as well is when you're thinking about the chefs, in the kitchen, maybe call them instructional designers or content developers. AI can actually help them, as I think the audience knows, help them more rapidly build the right type of content from a variety of different sources. It's not perfect, but it's becoming a lot more efficient. So if you can identify the right type of content asset, maybe it's just a video, maybe it's just a paragraph, maybe it's a scenario related to, financial services in Italy, right? If the behind the scenes folks can identify those chunks of content and make sure that they're modularized in such a way that for the consumer, the learner, the user in the front of the house, what happens now is that that consumer can go through, as you pointed out, Nigel, a much better experience because if the content is built in the right small targeted ways, guess what? It can be reassembled just for that need. So when you're thinking about, like, I'm a salesperson and I want to become a data scientist or something, so I'm a new person and I want to become a novice or have intermediate level of proficiency, just give me that unique stuff out of that 400 hours of content, but the unique might not be the 400 hours. Because AI and because people behind the scenes in the kitchen built it in such a unique way, guess what? Now I don't need to take all of 400. Just give me the 40 or just give me the 20. That's personalized, unique, and maybe adaptive for me. So it's a really, really different ballgame that we're working in. The rules are definitely changing big time. And I think for the benefit of not only the learning industry, but obviously for learners.
Yeah. Does it also mean that your customers' relationship with Cornerstone will change for the better, so that your customers will be clearer about what they want? They will have a much clearer insight into what is available, and they will be able to roll out much more specific programs or journeys, if you like, learning journeys for their staff, so that it's like it's all fine-tuned and all slicker than it might have been pre-gen generative AI. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I hope slicker, and I hope more efficiently built
Yes,
and more higher levels of efficacy. We actually, for the folks in the UK listening to this call, we actually conducted a workshop in London a couple weeks ago where we invited the top CLOs and the top learning leaders of our customers within Europe. And we spent the day just focusing on their particular needs or their particular use cases. In what ways would you need to use Gen AI? And so we had a really healthy full day's discussion and a very hands-on workshop structure. And it's exactly that. Cornerstone is very, very, very fixated in understanding our customer requirements. So our R&D, our research and development, interestingly, is actually founded and sourced by our customers' needs. So as we think about those use cases and those needs in this Gen AI workshop that we had a couple weeks ago, then that totally influences our engineering team and our product team to prioritize where we want to play. Because part of the scariness, for lack of better words, of all these Gen AI tools is there's so much to do, so many different things, but we don't want to play there, particularly since a lot of it's not perfect. And then from a Cornerstone ethics and maybe AI manifesto or policy perspective, we need to treat this with high levels of responsibility, particularly when you're working with somebody else's data. So we got to get it right. But at the same time, we need to know what the customer's needs are as they move forward, as they want to get it right for themselves. And then where can we join at the hip so to speak, and really make sure that we are not only meeting those requirements, but exceeding those requirements with different innovative approaches, like the ones we talked about in our restaurant example.
A real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for being so clear and being so optimistic about that new learning future. Mark Ramos, Chief Learning Officer at Cornerstone On Demand, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nigel.
Upskill and inform your learners with Mind Tools for Business. Empower your people to thrive at work and help them step up and meet everyday workplace challenges with confidence. Our toolkit provides unlimited access to thousands of quality-assured resources, all in one place. It's easy to use and on demand, anytime, anywhere. Experience stress-free onboarding with dedicated client partner support. And get access to our library of industry insight and expert analysis. Perform, manage, lead with Mind Tools for Business. Visit mindtoolsbusiness.com to find out more.
And we've got Robin Hoyle. Robin is talking to Professor Lynn Bianchi, and she's showing and talking about the new learning spaces at the University of Manchester. That's going to be really interesting as well.
Lynn Bianchi, Professor Lynn Bianchi here at Manchester University. Just tell me a little bit about your rather unusual role within the organisation.
Okay, so I've got two roles here. I'm the director of SERI, which is the Science and Engineering Research and Innovation Hub, which is all the stuff that we do with schools, but I'm also the Vice Dean. I'm the Vice Dean for Social Responsibility, Equality, Diversity, Inclusion and Accessibility. Rolls off the tongue.
It does indeed. Lynn, we're in the relatively new engineering building here, and one of the things that you've created or has been created here is basically a glass box, a glass building where the people of the local area can see in, or the students can see in. Why is that important given your role around communicating the importance of science and engineering, not just within the university but beyond?
Yeah, well, fundamentally, you're right. We've tried to open up as many spaces as possible. So you'll see windows. We've even got exposed ceilings so that you can see the engineering happening right before your eyes. And I think so much has been locked away. And even if you open the car underneath your car bonnet nowadays, everything's in a black box, isn't it? You don't see anything. And that's actually making us more distant from the world of science and engineering and what that means to tinker, what it means to engineer, what it means to design and adapt things and to improve. So yeah, we've opened this space up. This is a community space and it will develop as a community space. We're very, very new into the building at the moment, but enabling people to have access and build an identity with science and engineering is really massively important. We need to build our next generation of scientists and engineers, and we need that to be even more inclusive. We need to improve our gender equality. We certainly haven't got enough females working with us. We need to improve our equality on race, on LGBT, on disability. You know, we've still got a long way to go. So the more that we can open up and show that we are an active, vibrant, innovative community of people, the better.
And I think this particular space, it's called the maker space, and it's full of kit, it's full of opportunities to do things. As a learning space, why did you want it to be like that? Why did you want it to be that kind of place with what looks like a workshop from days gone by? Yeah.
Well, we need more of these spaces. If you go into any schools nowadays, especially the brand new ones, fantastic multi-academy trust spaces, but things like design technology aren't being heralded anymore. In actual fact, they're dying subjects. For a profession which relies on engineers, we need to be able to provide access. So yeah, the makerspace will become even more so, and is an open access space, a bit like a repair shop type approach, where we can bring the community in, we can work and interface with our students. Our students develop all sorts of skills in terms of communication, the kind of things that Hustwaite prides themselves on. And it gives everybody the opportunity just to be part of the community. Manchester University shouldn't be the black box. It should have its doors open. We have a responsibility to our civic partners and to the communities that live literally one street away. And
one of the things that I really love about it is that on one side of the room you've got 3D printers and things that I have to say, I'm reasonably technically literate and I have no idea what they do. And on the other side, a sewing machine. And I just love that combination of things that are here. What is it in terms of building a learning space? What do you think the key components are of that learning space? What is it that makes it a place where people can, will and want to learn?
Oh, really good question. Like you say, we've got the old and the new, you might say, but that just reflects the range of engineering disciplines. We've got material scientists here, we've got chemical engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical. You've got everything under this roof. So I suppose that the kit has to represent all of those different disciplines, but it also has to represent where somebody's mind might go, I suppose. We're constantly looking at what other kit needs to come in, and what is moved in and out of this building. So it's quite a diverse space. You'll see everything's on wheels. It can be transformed into different types of spaces. Today we're using it for filming. You can use it in lots of different ways. But we've just got to embrace where the future is going to take us, and it's not going to be a static curriculum as once was. It's got to be fast moving, and you'll probably see, if you came 6 months' time, even more stuff in here in a different way. I think anything that's open, learner centred, looks towards their interests. Yeah. And we do as much as we can to tailor to that interest. That's what we're doing as teachers.
Yeah, and it's a space where people can experiment. Yeah. I think that's the key, isn't it?
And tinker. That's right. Yeah, and to do that in a safe environment with professionals who can guide them, and to do that in a safe way. Yeah.
Lynn Bianchi, thank you very much.
It's okay. Cheers. Enjoyed it.
Regular viewers of Learning Now television will recognise the face with me on screen today. Danny Seales has been a guest, I think, a few times over the last few years, and very exciting. It's not often I have a prop, but we're here to talk about Danny's new book, The Insightful Innovator: How to Level Up Your Employee Experience. So, Danny, I feel like we've been on this journey a bit together. I am very biased. I've kind of, I've seen the inception of book number 1, which we'll talk more about in a minute. How do you feel now it's out in the wild?
I feel really good. It's a weird thing. So when you're writing a book, it's you wait for this big launch day, and then when it comes, it's just like, oh, my book's out there. So it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I think you build it up, and then, but I guess it's a bit like goal setting, right? You need something else then to keep that momentum going after it's done. But yeah, it's good. I think there's lots of, I'm getting lots of nice praise from people who's bought it, and who are using it. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Good. Now, there's loads to dive into, and what I want to do is to be able to show some of the the more innovative aspects of the book. So you very much didn't want to write your typical textbook, and one of the things I love is that there's lots of things. There's spaces to take notes, Danny discussions. There's pictures. There's diagrams. There's work canvases. Was that all very, very deliberate on your part in the planning?
Yeah, definitely. So, no tilt to other books, but most books within HR or whatever, they all kind of feel the same. And my book is about, it's 3 kind of things, really. It's culture crafting, kind of human-centered design and experience design, the whole kind of trilogy, if you like. So then I kind of thought, well, actually, if I'm going to do a book around how to think different and be different and come up with new innovative solutions, and that's got to start with how we create that book. Oh. So yeah, it was kind of from day one, I was like, right, this book needs to feel different, and it needs to be something where you can read a page and go, right, I can apply that straight away. So yeah, it was a thoughtful design for
Very
sure.
intentional, yeah. And do you think that's got anything to do with how you learn? Because my kids, my daughter particularly, like, she writes on everything. She's like me. She's a doodler, and she'll sort of say, "Oh, you can't fold the page down on the book though, mummy, or you can't like write on the book." And I'm like, "Well, why not actually? Because that helps me to process as I learn." Now, I'm not talking about learning styles, obviously, but I know that helps me with new information. Was that sort of deliberate in terms of maybe how your brain works?
Yeah. So obviously I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic. So there's always different ways in ways where I can capture my thoughts. So like throughout the book, there's elements of like Danny discussions, which is here's a piece of stimulus from outside your world. And actually, there's something around capturing that initial thought. So when you might see someone turn around and go, "Oh, we created, I don't know, an app for onboarding." It might not. Well, there's one in there for an app called Tudder, which was a dating app for cows. So farmers used it to get cows and get like pairing off. So then you go, "Oh, well, that doesn't actually make sense to the world of learning and play experience." But actually, if you take the concept of what that is and then wrap your world around it, you start to get new ideas and new thought. But often they're fleeting, right? As soon as you come in, they go out. And that's why within the book, Danny's discussions, there's a gap for you to quickly write that fleeting thought. So that when you do get through the book, you can kind of go back in it and then level down on your ideas again. So it's kind of like this constant loop where you can constantly build and build throughout the book.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's like a moment in time, but then allows you to go back.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's how I will use it is, I have read it from cover to cover once, but I think I'll then chop back in, because there's one section where you talk about being able to get more out of, sort of brainstorming, those kind of workshops. You say people go in, they have a creative couple of hours and think, "Oh, good, we've achieved something."
Yeah.
But actually that it's almost then the hard work begins, and you talk about how to really get more delivery or execution off the back of those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. So the way the kind of my design kind of process works, or my design flow in the book, is you've got sense making, which is looking at the human, the service, and the system, and then you go into incubation. But ultimately, incubation is two things. You've got two sides of the coin, right? So you've got this real dream part, which is big innovation, big kind of bold ideas, big concepts, and really out there. And then after you've been in that dream phase, you want to go into the distill phase, which distills it down. Now, obviously, there's two different mindsets there. Like the last thing you want is you want someone who's a real logical thinker and works in the constraints of now to be in that dream phase. You'll need it later on, but right now you don't need it. So it is two clear phases. And I guess for me, when I look at that, yeah, you can go real big and get all these ideas, but at some point you need to put an element of real world in there. And distill them down to the concepts and test them with desirability, feasibility, and viability in the business. But the problem is if you go straight to distill, there might be something in that big, bold idea, but it might not be the idea. There might be an element of it what you can bring in. So you can't really miss dream or distill because they're equally important.
And I mean, that will resonate with a lot of our viewers. So, from a facilitation point of view, if nothing else, but, who is the book for? And, you have a really strong learning and development background, but it's safe to say that what you do is, evolved out of a pure play learning role. So for many of our kind of L&D viewers, what would you say is in the book for them? I've got my own opinion, but what would you as the author say is in the book for them?
Everything. So when I was writing this book originally, it started out as being an L&D type book. So it started out as creating what I call the anti-fragile L&D. And then it just kind of grew because obviously I kind of left L&D, I think around about 2018, 19. But all the concepts still apply. I was chatting on my podcast yesterday actually to someone, and they were saying like, ultimately there's still this solution seduction to ideas. People, you go to learn and you get a learning solution. And the argument should be learning often really isn't the solution. And you can either bang your head against the wall and say that and people won't take it on, or you can enable people to look at challenges differently and then let them come up with different solutions. And that's what this book's about, really. It's around, rather than jumping in feet first and going, oh, there needs to be a learning solution, actually make sense of the problem first.
Yeah.
Understand the world in which that problem operates and who's part of that challenge, that problem. You'll then start to slowly look at things and go, maybe learning isn't what we need right now. Maybe it's something else.
Because you've got an entire chapter on, now what do you call it, the problem statement, which finding the right problem statement, and that to me and that's an early chapter. That to me is that real foundational view of, well, what do we need here? Because as we know, it might not be something formal. It might be, just some coaching or getting people together or, whatever that might be. But I think, that's what you've always done for me as a friend, is like challenge the lens through which I will look at things. So I think to have it encapsulated in book form and referenceable by so many more people is just wonderful.
Yeah, I think with the problem statement one, and actually a few people's talked about that, and the dare canvas in there. For me, there's a real. This is good then. That's good. I need to print it out and just make it so that people can download it. But for me, when I think about the problem statement, like often we go either too narrow or too big, and I think in the book I use the ladder of abstraction in there to kind of say, actually, what level are you looking at problem? The further you go up this ladder, the more abstract it is, the more bigger it becomes. And the further you go down the ladder, the more tactical and more sleeves rolled up it comes. And often the challenge, what is usually put in place on the first one, like, I don't know, we need to create a new leadership program. Often that isn't in the right rung on that ladder. Sometimes there's more value going up or going further down. And what this does is it allows you just to sweat that problem statement, that challenge, and actually see, are we looking at it from the right angle and from the right kind of rung of the ladder?
I love that. I like the thought of sweating it as well, because otherwise you can waste an awful lot of time and money not getting that bit right.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, as ever, time has flown. I knew it would. But this is so you say here, the book is intended for two groups: explorers who are looking to create new internal services, products, interactions, and experiences, and scientists who work in functions such as HR, learning, or talent, and focus on sense-making, iterating current initiatives, and internal solutions. So I know that will sound like a lot of our audience, but this isn't it, is it? It's not just about this book. There's two more to come.
Yes. So the second part of the book is focused on experimentation and experience design. And then the third one is focused on culture crafting. So actually, how do you create better team dynamics, better organization by basically hacking your culture and using behavioral experimentation and all these other things to kind of, just roll your sleeves up, and rather than me put a framework in on change, actually just roll your sleeves up and try this out really quick and see what works. So yeah, it's a part one.
So you can get it from all good bookstores, Amazon, etc. And the other thing that Danny does throughout the book and more generally is provide sort of additional resources, additional insights, and we'll have the link. Hopefully Colin will put the link up to We Are Not at the bottom here as well. But Danny, thank you for taking the time. As you know, I'm sure you go around the country signing books left, right and centre.
No, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to come on. Thanks, Kate.
Great. We'll see you again soon for the second book.
Bye.
Are you productive or are you just busy? At Happy, we run a productivity blitz course. It runs for a whole week, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, with 10 top tips. Those who came on the course found they gained 38 minutes in productivity each day. So let us help you be more productive.
So Toby Kang is back to continue his series with us on employee experience. And in this second episode, he's focusing on the importance of employee branding. It's a really interesting area. It's something I've spent quite a lot of time talking about over the last couple of years. It sort of sits adjacent to L&D, but I think you'll find it really interesting.
So last time I was here, I was speaking about the employee experience design and how L&D's role in that is super important, and they are probably the best department in any organization to support with it. But what I highlighted was that it was only ever going to be effective in a broader HR strategy that was designed to be as effective as employee experience design, because in its silo, learning development probably isn't going to have the impact that it wants to and talks about quite often. So I'm here to talk about the first of 5 steps that I think HR strategies need to go through to help L&D teams essentially deliver the very best work that they can. And like I said, I think last time I mentioned it was the 5 Fs. So the first of the 5 Fs today is fascinate. Now, fascinate in any other term is probably known as employer value proposition or employer brand, which is great. I know that there are companies out there that have people or teams that even look after this. But again, when we think about this more holistic HR strategy, fascinate or employer brand needs to really focus on the products and services that are actually being delivered inside an organization today and in reality. Because most kind of just advertise a shop window of products and services that every employer does. We have these benefits, we have these working hours, we have all these different things that we can have in terms of competitive salary, and we offer training. Everyone says we offer training but doesn't define it. So there's a real opportunity here to go out to market as an employer with some specificity and say, actually, this is what makes us different, rather than just regurgitating the same old stuff that kind of every employer does. And when you do that, you then have to really evaluating the metrics of when a potential employer becomes a potential employee, becomes a potential employee. And HR is often kind of just looking at that moment when they first apply for a role or start engaging with the recruitment team. But actually, any employee experience starts way, 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 way before that, and probably way before you're even able to measure it. But the first measurable point of an employee experience is when a person either purchases from you, they follow you on social media, they like any or engage with any of your posts. There are these measurable things out there where the employee experience begins. And HR's role and L&D's role is to understand where is that very first point, how can we measure and understand it, but also impact the journey from then. That's really, really important. Now, the biggest critical kind of thing that we need to get right with fascinating an audience to join any organization is to really appreciate one of the things that a lot of people say but don't actually do, and that's hiring for diversity. Now, every organization I've pretty much worked with over the past couple of years says, we want to hire a diverse range of people. No one has ever come to me and said, we don't want that. However, what they don't do is they don't really appreciate the amount of time and effort it needs to go into that. But because, I think as I mentioned last time, the employee experience is designed for this single type of person to go through that organization. So when we look at attracting people to an organization, we need to not only attract a single type of person, we need to attract a multitude of people, but also it then has to be lived and breathed through the organization. And I will mention that when we go through the other 4 of the 5 Fs as we go through this series. But I would just want to give you a very quick example before I leave you. And I think that's, I worked with an organization a couple of years ago where they were super happy that they achieved a gender balance within their organization. They had 50% men, 50% women, and they kind of thought they were done, but they hadn't, because actually, whilst they managed to get gender equality through the door, what they weren't doing is then appreciating the differences between genders and then all the nuances in between of how those people want to be treated. So whilst at the attraction level, when we're fascinating our audience, we can try and attract the right amount of people and the right diverse talent into our organization, there is so much more to be done beyond that other than just attracting them. And that is for the next few videos in the series, which I'll talk about the rest of the employee experience journey.
And of course, it wouldn't be Learning Now Television without Rob Clark, back to talk about the latest roundup from Learning News. Stay tuned for what's hot and what's happening.
Staff at the fast food burger chain Five Guys can now get to experience the kitchen before they get there. Training Journal, our longest standing learning publication, has a new editor. Fosway's annual report into cloud HR shows the market is coping well with the wider economic pressures. Voting has opened in the 2024 L&D Global Sentiment Survey. To compete in the hugely competitive dining out market, restaurants have sought continuity across their locations. If a customer gets a poor restaurant experience, they're likely to tell more people compared with other kinds of purchases they make. So, getting the training right for staff can make all the difference. The restaurant chain Five Guys has moved into immersive training and simulated its environment using virtual reality. Its aim is to improve onboarding for new staff and training for existing staff, so that they are familiar with their work before they start.
So one of the key goals of Five Guys is to ensure consistent quality, both in terms of food cooking quality as well as customer service across their locations worldwide. This would secure them essentially a no brand damage, a competitive advantage. So we have introduced the more hands-on in-store modules using experiential extended reality learning courses, a sort of virtual bootcamp with live learning experiences for new hires and continuing learners. So this approach allows the trainees to virtually experience tasks like working the grill, using the tools on the grill, or even focus on soft skills training, such as customer service or managing difficult conversations and much more.
I've got Joe Cook with me, the new editor of Training Journal. Joe, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Exciting news.
Very exciting news, Joe. I'm delighted for you, delighted for Training Journal. What's on the to-do list?
Oh, quite a few different things. And first of all, it's got to be absolutely continuing the great work that Debbie Carter has been doing for decades at Training Journal. I've got very big shoes to fill.
What are the areas of focus for Training Journal over the next year or so?
Making sure that we do the great work of informing learning, of informing HR about things that are going on in the learning industry, about supporting and developing the industry that we've got, which is a hugely exciting industry, hugely passionate industry. I remember doing some research years ago, just off my own back, just a little survey, and it was really focusing on what makes us passionate about our role, and it was helping people. And that's what I think TJ is about helping people to help people. So I'm really going to focus on that. I of course want to keep up with things like the how-tos. We want the practitioner viewpoint, because that detail of like, this is a great idea and a great concept, but how do I actually do this when I go to the office on Monday? Some of that stuff's going to be really important. But also we want to reflect the trends going on in the industry. AI, obviously a huge one. Sustainability, things around kind of ROI and proving our value. All of these are core L&D subjects, and they're ones that I want to make sure I focus on as well.
Fosway's annual report into cloud HR is out and reveals a market responding to social, business and digital transformation, and a market coping well with the wider economic pressures.
The market actually continues to defy the glooming expectations of a recession in Europe. It's really showcasing some resilience and vitality. Growth rates of some of the leading providers are, still north of 20%, which I think is quite remarkable. European HR teams were lagging, digitization anyway since the pandemic. They have started to kind of, accelerate that journey, and we are still not through with that. So this trend is accelerating in the face of economic uncertainty. And number two, the skills crisis is still there, and there's much more pressure on organizations still to optimize, to innovate their workforce planning, their people operations. They have to be smart about these things. Development, retention are really quite important during this time. So I guess overall, there's no denying that budget pressure is increasing, for almost like everyone. But we know from our research that HR technology budgets for 2024 are actually increasing still. For many organizations, this means that they are consolidating their HR systems further. And the idea of a single suite strategy is still strong in the market overall, right? So I think these factors play together.
The L&D Global Sentiment Survey takes the pulse of the learning and development community. It asks one question: what will be hot in workplace L&D in the year ahead?
But let's assume that AI is going to do well this year. What else could we look for? I think we have to look at where does AI take its votes from and which options are more resilient. So you might expect there to be like a technology switch. People might vote for AI rather than voting for the metaverse or for VR. So the technology ones might be hit. But what will happen to other options like showing value and consulting more deeply with the business? Now, those two have been on a slow upward trajectory, which is very unusual, for the last 5 years. Will that continue, or will they be hit? If so, how hard by interest going elsewhere? I think that's one of the key things to look for. Also, regional differences. We know that the interest in AI was not uniform in the 2023 survey. And what about split across workplaces? Learning and development was actually much less enthusiastic about AI than, for example, educators and vendors and freelancers. Will that be the same this year? Let's have a look.
That's learning news for December and for 2023. As always, the full news features from today's bulletin are on the website. Thank you to all of my guests this year, and thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed our reports, and I wish you all the best for the holidays ahead and a very happy new year. See you in 2024.
I've always claimed that Learning Now TV traverses the world. And just to prove it today, I'm talking to Ben Campbell. Ben is the Chief Executive of AITD, that is the Australian Institute for Training and Development. So just tell me, how did you get there? What's your career trajectory? Where do you come from to become Chief Executive of AITD?
Well, I'm going to give a sense of optimism for all those marketers out there who are trying to fight their way through the system and be recognised. I came from a marketing background, and funnily enough, I'd worked in some elements of training in my marketing side of things, and just pushed my way through the commercial sector, working for big food companies and bank and pharmaceutical, and then went into the not-for-profit and sort of increasingly sort of marketing management roles until eventually I got thrust into general management with another association. With great thanks to my various mentors, people who looked out for me and gave me that gig. So it's been about 10, 12 years in general management, working my way through the system. So it's been fantastic to come here to AITD and work with a great bunch of people-orientated people, which is, as a marketer, general manager, I love working with people.
So let's just talk a little bit about AITD. It's the Australian Institute for Training and Development. Who is your target audience? And I know you're going to say L&D professionals, but who are you aiming at? Are you aiming at the big corps, the small solo traders, people working for small organizations, or everyone above?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered everyone above. I think what's important to flesh out here is that in the L&D world, there's such diversity of sectors, whether they be mining or education, vocational training, defence or consultancy. So whether it's a corporate or whether it's a consultant or a government organisation, or individuals or corporates, there's a wide range of sectors involved as well. So target is really those people who are looking to bring L&D up to the strategic level within any organisation, or to create learning and development programs for those corporates. And so we recognise those types of L&D activities such as gamification, onboarding, the full gamut right across the spectrum.
Yeah, so you see your view as a facilitative role in a way, that you are enabling people to have important conversations. And the big focus is the annual conference. Obviously, that's your big event. And you've really, I think, transformed that over the 2 or 3 that you've been in charge of. It's bigger, it's more ambitious, and it's attracting more people. But what else do you do? It's not just a conference, is it?
As a member, it just brings you into a community. Like, so often people find themselves isolated, with low budgets and, that an eye on the bottom line. Where does a L&D professional sit? And how many of you can you afford in any different organization? And unless you're in defense, where there is a whole stack of training, officers that are involved, quite often people find themselves like as the solo L&D professional. Perhaps, they've got to find their way, through human resources. They've got to establish their mark. It's probably a little bit similar to marketing and sales, just trying to find your distinctive. So what we offer is the opportunity for people who, are somewhat isolated, who just need statistics and case studies to showcase their, why L&D is important, and to be able to download to other people within a network of other friendly, supportive people. So that's what, AITD brings people together. So the conference is great to try to bring people like yourselves, people who've got great experience, good case studies, and, people want to hear about that, what's going on in the L&D world and how it's going to help them in their careers. But also there's the Excellence Awards, and that's one way of showcasing what's best out there. People want to get examples. They want to feel inspired. Just been spending a lot of time on that this coming week. We've got the Excellence Awards in the Gold Coast in Queensland, which is going to be exciting. But other things that people really love are the magazines, opportunities to write in, to hear from people right across, Australia, New Zealand. We have a partnership with them as well. And people love the magazine. And then we just keep holding things like webinars and that sort of stuff, just to keep people informed and advised. And we have divisional councils that operate at a local level to get people together regularly, in their area.
But it's a massive country, Australia. You're trying to hold the organisation together across 4.5 hours of flights from Perth across to the East Coast, and you've got members in all the big cities. So is that working? Is it very isolated? Do you manage to put people in Perth together with people in Adelaide, together with people in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane?
That is a really big focus for me at the moment, around seeing those groups really thriving. And I know the goodwill, the intention, the desire is to make it happen in any of those states. So how we build that infrastructure to make it vibrant, supportive and engaged, and empowered, that's certainly a direction that we're on. We have stronger groups in some states and some which are just emerging. But what we do have is fantastic leaders in each of those different states who are happy to assist those who are emerging. So we've got one lady who, she comes from another state, she's based in another one, but because the state she originally came from is emerging, she's mentoring them to bring them up. There's that kind of giving nature, and that's what really is what AITD is about. We all get a thrill out of seeing people support one another.
So essentially, what you're doing is kind of turning a shop window or turning a light onto Australian learning and development and helping Australia help itself in a way. Because I think the tendency when AITD was not strong was to look out to the US or out to Europe. And what you're doing is showcasing the knowledge, experience, and the good practice which exists in Australia, but wouldn't necessarily shine across the country. What's going on in Perth, it's hard to find out what's going on in Perth without a focal point like AITD. So you've got that kind of networking role, haven't you? That's a primary role, is to join the country together and make Australia better across the board by raising everybody to the standard of the best, in a sense.
Yeah, we have incredible learning development professionals in Australia who are presenting all around the world, and we don't necessarily um, hear from them, or we haven't necessarily connected with them. But I would like to. I would like to invite all those, tremendously accomplished, internationally, known and speaking professionals to connect with AITD, because we can learn from them and they can also benefit from the networks that we have. There's plenty of opportunities for them to be involved. So yeah, I do like to think that Australia can and will and does to a large extent, but enhance its capacity. I think a classic example is around the market research, and there's a lot of trends worldwide, and Australians contribute to that significantly around the world. They're so giving and they're so generous.
So Ben, I wish you luck. I really wish you all the best for AITD. I hope it continues to flourish. And it's a pleasure talking to you today. And thank you very much for agreeing to come on. And thank you for all you do for Australian training and development. So well done. Thank you so much.
Very much appreciated, Nigel, and my very best to your community watching this at this time. And I just wanted to put the invitation out there that people can connect up with me through LinkedIn, but also just to give consideration about how we would benefit in Australia from your skills internationally, how that might come into our conference, for example, and what kind of opportunities you might give to Australian L&D practitioners around the world. We'd love to see more of that. Thanks very much, Nigel.
Kate, you had a really interesting conversation with Danny. Sum it up for us. What did you make of Danny's new transformation, the new Danny?
I think it's just really exciting for me to see all of the ideas. The book's called The Insightful Innovator, and that really does sum Danny up. But for him to have almost bottled, the creative lens that he uses to look at work and the employee experience, not just learning. I just think it is so valuable for us all to step outside ourselves and think about things in a different way. And he's a very creative person. I am horribly biased, I know, but there's some really good sections in the book for kind of self-reflection, prompts to kind of do things on and I think if you take that back to sort of how we all learn, it kind of goes in a different way. It doesn't feel like a textbook. So I just think, and that whole kind of piece, the trend around employee experience, that's not going away. The bigger macro trends around people picking and choosing who and where they work for. We have had a bit of a bumpy ride since the old Great Resignation, but there's still a lot of power, especially in the hands of top talent and top skills.
I agree with you. I think that's a really good insight, and I also think that if you keep an eye on Danny, he's always got his finger on whatever button it's good to have your finger on. So you get some really contemporary insights from him as well. So he's a man of the moment. He shifts his perspective as the world changes, and that's the kind of best person to keep close to. I think you're 100% right, Kate.
Absolutely, and I think for us all, like it's always a time of year to reflect, isn't it, and think about, well, what am I going to do differently next year, and what do I want to do more of? And I think there's some really good food for thought in all of today's discussion. AI is going to be a big topic for us next year, whether or not you're really getting into the coalface, or you're sort of sitting back and planning and experimenting. The employee experience bit, as I say, will continue to kind of grow. I think the kind of the learning spaces that Robin was talking about as well, that the way that we use the physical elements of work and the virtual elements of work and learning, they're still up for grabs. I don't think there's not one fixed model yet for different organizations to use. So, I think we've got some rich veins of subject matter to continue into next year.
I think so. I'm looking forward to next year. I think it's going to be a real big year of change. I hope I don't say that every year, but I genuinely believe it this year. And to prove it, we've got a whole bunch of events that kick off the new year with the World of Learning Summit at Olympia on the 30th and 31st of Jan. We've got the Learning Awards on the 22nd of February. And we've got 3 webinars by a very well-known person, Kate, that you've had quite a lot. Who could it be? Yes, it's me.
So, well, do you want me to? I'll do the reading out so you don't get embarrassed. So
you tell us about those. Yes, tell me what he's going to be doing, Kate.
This guy Nigel, Dr. Nigel Payne, will be talking on the 25th of January. These are free to register, by the way, so the links will appear at the bottom of the screen. So, developing the organisational brain. Then on the 7th of March, you'll be moving on to embracing external insights to drive change. Excellent, and that kind of ties in with some of what we were just talking about.
Indeed, it does.
The 23rd of April is the hat trick: adopting healthy habits, how to fail in order to learn, and how to ask for help. I think we all need a bit of that.
We do, and all of those, Kate, are preludes to launching my new book in May. So it's all relevant, I hope.
Can't wait. Well, I get to interview you then again, so that's exciting.
You certainly do. You certainly do.
And then through to the 17th and 18th of April, Learning Technologies is back slightly earlier this year, 2024. Sorry, we're not there yet. That's the big one for those of us in the UK. So looking forward to that.
Yes. It is, me too. And we'll be back on the 25th of April. Note it in your diaries now. 25th of April.
January.
And until then...
January.
Sorry, did I say April? I meant January. 25th of January. I'm jumping through time. I think I'm Doctor Who. This is the problem. I think I'm Doctor Who, Kate. I'm very sorry. I'm not a time traveller.
I think you're ready for your Christmas break. I think you need a mince pie.
I think I'm ready for my Christmas break. Maybe even longer than Christmas. There are a lot of people who think should have been put out to pasture years ago. So until then, have a wonderful New Year. And to you, Kate, happy Christmas. Have a wonderful New Year. And we'll see you all in 2024 on the 25th of January. Thank you.
Bye.